This is another episode of No Suits and No Slides. I'm here with our first guest ever, Bill Beach, but I am John Fraze, Senior Managing Director at Ankara. And Bill Beach, who just finished his 4-year term as a Commissioner of Statistics for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has agreed to join us. We also got free t-shirts or collared shirts. I'm very excited about this. Was also my boss for 2 summers in D.C. many years ago. So, Bill, we're glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, you pretty well nailed it there. 25 years ago, I worked for you. And
Exactly.
No, it's I'm lifelong public policy person, lifelong economist, thinking about the issues that were just really encapsulated by the mission of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We looked at prices and all kinds of things that are happening on the workplace, from safety to the new automation and how it's affecting jobs and salaries and productivity. And of course, that we're probably most famous for the Friday Jobs Report, which has been a shocker every Friday for many Fridays.
We've been talking about you for a long time.
Yeah, shocker. So it's my view, and I'll just tee this up, that we have the most productive economy we've ever had, and that its horizon is really just in front of us. So all the naysayers can go fish as far as I'm concerned.
But you're a data scientist, an economist, a policy impactor and commentator, and then we've got the infamous Dave Gilbertson, who's a troublemaker.
Generally, that is on my business card, actually. Dave Gilbertson, troublemaker. Dave Gilbertson, Vice President at UKG. And if there was any question about whether John and I were labor nerds, we have now answered it with our BLS t-shirts.
We went to your offices.
The only time we wear it.
Really nice.
We have our pens. We've got all kinds of
They gave us pens too, Bill.
That's right.
We were at the offices this morning. We got a tour, and we sat and talked to some data scientists. It was very exciting.
Riding high.
So there's a lot of different subjects that we wanted to tackle with them and that we talked to you about as well. Tell us what's been on your mind after 4 years really entrenched in the data. What are the things that are fascinating for you?
So I think, it was an interesting 4 years, right? From 2019 to 2023. It's a statutory term. I wasn't dismissed for any reason. It was just,
You left on your own free will
just
2 weeks ago.
Just at the end of a 4-year term. I was very happy. I served 2 presidents, 3 secretaries of labor. I'll tell you that without the statistical organs of the federal government and state governments, you really wouldn't know what was happening in the world. And I think that's the most surprising thing, but the most ordinary thing that people realize when they say, well, what did you do? And I said, well, we created infrastructure. We built the highways that you traveled on. Otherwise, you couldn't have traveled. You wouldn't know what GDP is. GDP doesn't exist in nature. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as total number of jobs in nature. You have to go to a statistics organization, challenge them to come up with ways of measuring, reasonably so, social and economic phenomena, and then they measure them and repeat the measurement. It's scrutinized, and it becomes part of the productive economic infrastructure of the country.
And it moves stock markets, it moves business decisions. CEOs make decisions based on the information that you folks release.
And so you really can't think about the statistical system or BLS as separate from a private business. We kind of jointly produce private and public goods because you really need that. So the responsibility that we had to get our work done, particularly in the 3rd week of March of 2020, when we had to shut down the entire statistical system and yet keep it going.
Right.
It was really immense. If we hadn't had that, then it would. So that's one of the things I'm thinking about now, is how that was done. Of course, over the course of that period of time, we had unprecedented levels of unemployment and then unprecedented levels of recovery. So what was going on there? Did we really have a recession? I'm part of the group that says we didn't, that we had a collapse and that we really had the same economy of 2019 return, which is, in my view, one of the strongest economies we've ever had. Worldwide changes in population are going to affect this economy over the course of time. That's very important. That too has to be measured by statistical means. Just the role of automation, I'm thinking a lot about that now as our population gets so much wealthier and has all this discretion about whether to work or not. More and more people are going to take their income choice and retire from the labor force, but we still need to produce goods and services, and that'll be produced more and more by your company.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's we're obsessed with it.
A little bit deeper on that. So as you look out 20 to 30 years, what do we have in store for us in the labor market, at least? It's such a tight market right now.
Yeah.
You think that's going to change? How are you looking at the next 20, 30 years in the labor market?
So the U.S. is going to be, all right, so all premised on this, that we don't make really knuckleheaded mistakes in public policy. For example,
Should be a problem.
Congress fails to pass a bill to tax everybody's income by 100% tax rate, right? That would stop everything.
Yep.
Assuming that we have basically the same pro-growth package that we've had on and off over the course, and maybe more on than off over the next 25 years. The U.S. is scheduled to have a growing population. Now, that's kind of important because China has a declining population. It declines by 50% by 2100. It has less than 1 billion people. India has declines. Almost all European countries decline in population. Japan almost disappears. There's country after country is going to have to make huge moves to automation, to robotics, to AI in order to continue to produce the goods and services with their declining population. However, the United States can take advantage of all of that R&D and all of that science. That China is going to be the leading country in the world on that point, but we will have a growing population, and it will be largely because of immigration. You can see this in last year's figures. 980,000 people entered the labor force who were naturally born or born in the United States, and almost 1.2 million entered the labor force from outside of the United States.
That is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think since we talked a couple weeks ago, I've mentioned that comment a couple times. People that have absolutely no idea about economics or statistics, or everybody can grasp onto that data point, where less than half of those that entered the labor market in the U.S. last year were actually born in the U.S.
That's right. And
so that leads to some huge conclusions going 3-5 years out.
Well, it does, but it's really what's been happening for the past 20, 30 years. Now about 55%, a little under 55% of all labor force growth in the past 25 years is due to people entering this country to work. Now, they're entering this country largely legally to work, but we would also count those who are entering this country without the legal documents. You call them undocumented, or you want to call them illegal, whatever. Their labor also counts in the production of goods and services. So we need desperately to come up with an immigration reform package that allows for that growth, because we'll be dependent on it. This country will not be rich because of its resources. 5,000 years ago, we had the same resources that we have today, and we did not have a rich country. It's due to how inventive and clever we are and what we do with our capacities, and that's all public policy and private policy, but it's also getting labor in place.
It's almost a little political. Capitalism, free markets.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's no system ever devised which produces more well-being than a system of free enterprise.
That's right. I do appreciate the fact that you said whether it's undocumented or illegal, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter, because what we're talking about here isn't politics. We're talking about statistics, we're talking about the economy, we're talking about growth, jobs. Those political things don't really matter. What matters is, are people coming into the country, or are they not coming into the country? Are they coming into work, or are they not coming into work? Legal, illegal, documented, undocumented, that's not part of the statistics that we're trying to figure out here.
And the ability to support employment is dependent on those workers being available.
It still matters. It still matters. I'm just saying when we talk about the math, we're trying to figure out, are people coming into work? And Dave and I have spent a lot of time talking about the flip side of the argument, which is young people are not having children at the same rate they used to. They're not getting married. They're not leaving their families' homes. They are working, though. But when we think about population growth, we've had a very narrow view of that because of domestic population growth. When you add in immigration and the belief that we're going to fix some of these policies and it's going to grow, it really does change the argument.
So there's one reason why we need to be a little bit concerned about who's coming into the country, and that is if we're getting over 1 million people a year and the labor force is growing by 2 million, say just 50%, we're getting 1 million coming in. Are they coming in with skills that cross all of the horizon of skills?
Sure.
Yep.
Or are they coming in with high skills or with low skills or medium skills? Well, most now that are coming in with lower skills because they come from countries with below average income, certainly below ours. And so their educational attainments, their health status, even their age would indicate that they have lower skills. That really matters because if they're coming in with low skills, they have low earnings, they have low tax revenues then. If you have a payroll system which is sending in money to support Social Security from generally low-income people, it's not going to produce the income necessary
Sure.
to support Social. Population change really matters, and you have to get into the compositional elements of it. But one thing, if I go back to the global side for a second, because it's so interesting there, the fastest growing countries in the next, according to the UN population projections, over the next 75 years or so, will be in the sub-Saharan Africa area. And you'll see Kenya is scheduled to be the fastest growing country in the world on a percent basis, and will get pretty close to 1 billion people by 2100.
Wow.
From 200 million, 290 million now. So, if you're thinking about where do you put your attention in terms of market growth and that sort of thing, well, sub-Saharan Africa is clearly going to be the hot spot. That's the development spot.
Well,
John, so we've been doing this 3 years. I have yet to hear you say anything intelligent on the Kenyan labor market. In 10 minutes with Bill, here we go.
No, exactly. I've got a long way to go.
Fascinating, right?
The mix, again, we're talking about what makes a healthy labor market. We're not talking about what makes a responsible social society from the standpoint of social policy. We're looking at the labor mix to have an effective economy moving forward.
Yeah.
And it is about skills mix. It's about who's coming in. Do we have those high-skilled employees to handle automation?
Exactly. And also, one of the things that makes it so attractive about our labor market, as opposed to many others in the world, is how easy it is for you to leave a job and take a job. So the quit rate and the hire rate are two of the biggest signals we have about the dynamism, the health of this economy. You want to see people, we have on an average year, we haven't had an average year in several years, but on an average year, 7.5 million people leave their place of work. And we get, 7 and maybe 8 million, maybe 8.5 million people. We have new jobs.
Sure.
So when BLS reports the Friday jobs report, they're reporting the delta or the change between those two dynamics. So if you have a huge market like this, providing all kinds of opportunity, you're going to attract immigrants. I think we need to be thinking about a skills-based immigration system, maybe some kind of way in which we could say, here is what we need.
That kind of logic is very difficult politically.
Oh, well, it's also hard economically because you never really know what you need in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it is.
Well,
tough.
yeah. So on that point, so what recommendations do you have for business leaders that are trying to navigate a very tight labor market, historically tight labor market? So based on the data you're providing, I could see that being pretty depressing going forward, right? We're relying on kind of rational policy going forward. So how should business leaders think about what you're proposing?
So it's a problem that has several pieces, and they're not necessarily answered with the same response, right?
Sure.
If you're in manufacturing, your basic future is determined by enhanced labor. That is robotics that are using machine learning or some kind of computer code to basically do the same thing that humans are doing. I call that enhanced labor. So you're looking at a high skill set, lots of investment in technology, and probably being a part of a global value chain where either design or distribution or financing is somewhere else in the world.
Yep.
For 85% of the labor force, which is in the service producing side of the operation, all of that's important. Yes, we're going to have lots of robotics and all, but here I think the most important thing is to accommodate training, to accommodate development of employees, to make sure that you are attracting them with a compensation package. These are standard things that we should be doing right now.
Sure.
And we generally are doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Wage growth is not a bad thing, right? And so wages are growing right now at about 4% year over year. And they should probably be at that level.
Yeah.
And so in a competitive firm, a firm looking to succeed, you should have high levels of accountability, high levels of compensation, and a good training package in place. And the dynamism of the economy, hopefully we always will have it unless regulatory burden hits us really hard.
Yeah.
That's what will make for success in the future. I'm not saying anything new, obviously, but that's what I tell business leaders out there who say, is there a magic bullet here? And I say, no, not really. Just doing the right thing.
No, but that's really practical advice. So one is invest in robotics and automation.
Yeah.
Two is ensure that you're not skipping on wage growth because there are plenty of other options out there.
Right.
And then three, it sounds like you're feeling like this is going to be a pretty tight labor market for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and the interesting implication of what you just said is what everybody should know, but sadly many people don't, and that is that automation does not destroy jobs.
Yes.
So the kind of robotics and automation, AI enhanced, all these computer-based things that are happening out there are really just replacing tasks in current jobs. They're making the kinds of tasks which can be automated. But when we do that, we know from history that we actually create more opportunities because our productivity goes up.
Higher value.
Higher value. We see things we hadn't seen before. So the history of everything, really basically, of labor force development since 1800 to the present is one of the combination of automated processes, robotics coming in to create jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beneficial cycle. So that's another thing that the business community can do is to get out there and talk about how job creation and automation are not incompatible.
Right.
We have failed historically in industry to talk about automation and how it creates jobs. I remember when Uber said, we're going to have automated cars, they're going to self-driving cars, but don't worry, we're still going to need mechanics to take care of these cars. And it's, instead of 100,000 drivers, we'll have 5,000 mechanics.
Sure.
That sounded like the math was pretty rough.
Right.
But when you look at manufacturing as an example, it really is about enhanced labor, driving more value, making better products that frankly cost more but deliver more value.
Yeah,
That's true.
And
true.
and
So
that's good.
When I started many years ago in the dark ages, working as an economist, my first job was with the state of Missouri. I started in government. I'm ending in government, I guess.
We'll see.
And,
We'll see.
Yeah. And just the week after I started, or 2 weeks after, the Brown Shoe Company in St. Louis closed its doors. The last shoe company in the United States.
Oh, interesting.
So the workers there, the unions there, petitioned Governor Ashcroft, John Ashcroft, who's my boss, to stop this. And Ashcroft did the right thing and didn't stop it. Those jobs went to Brazil at that time. That's where the shoe business was located. Well, what happened to St. Louis? Did it go downhill?
Right.
Did it just fall to pieces because they lost 5,000 jobs? No, people came in, businesses came in and said, you people work with your hands, you do detailed things. Let's see if you can do detailed things over here in this other side.
Sure.
Retrained them. Same thing happened with Zenith Television in Springfield, Missouri, just a few weeks later. Last television company. So my point is that these things are natural
Cycles.
Yeah.
Out of the ashes rises the phoenix.
Very
So
true.
certainly.
Yeah, over and over again.
That's great.
Very interesting. Well, do we want to wrap it up and maybe go a little bit deeper on automation with our next
one? Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Right. We're going to leave a cliffhanger on No Suits, No Slides. I don't think we've done that before.